I'm talking to the governor of the Reserve Bank, Lesetja Kganyago, and of course, this is your topic, it's your economy. Would like to hear your views as well. The hashtag, the Modise Network, that's where you can share your views and comments with us. Now, I know that you refer some of the questions to Treasury or elsewhere in the government, but then again, you manage risk. From where I'm sitting, that's what I think. And then you look at the strike at SAA. What are your thoughts about it? What is the best way to manage it? Put in more money or not put in more money there?
I heard the Minister of Public Enterprises talk about this yesterday and today, and I think he is the most appropriate authority to talk about that enterprise.
Well, but the view, Governor, is that you are deflecting these questions, but they do concern you. Do they or don't they concern you?
No, I am not deflecting the questions. I just do not know enough about SAA.
Are you paying close attention to it? And if so, why?
No. The point here is that we have got a particular mandate that we have been tasked with, and that is what we must focus on. Put simply, as one of the commentators said, the more you stay in your lane, the less trouble you get into. So I would rather stay in my lane.
But you see, earlier I did compliment you on being one of the top professionals, including the institutions that you mentioned, that have done a fantastic job and somehow, if I understood you correctly, shielded us from a worse position than where we find ourselves in. And on that basis, that's why I would trust your views on some of the questions that I put to you.
The institutions I was talking about are constitutionally created institutions like the Reserve Bank. I'm not sure that SAA is a constitutionally... Actually, let me say it is not a constitutionally created institution, and I wouldn't even compare the Reserve Bank to it.
Let's go to the National Development Plan. Right? I sometimes ask myself, is it worth our while talking about it? Because it was discussed, it was put out there, and then it was hailed as this great plan that's going to get South Africa out of low growth rates and will answer most of our problems. But, you know, listening to you talk about a growth rate of 0.5% and debt levels that are high and other things, Auditor General coming out with the report that says irregular expenditure has grown substantially to 62 billion rands, then you wonder, what was that National Development Plan about? I'm not dismissing it, but I wonder if we can still talk about it.
Tim, there was the National Development Plan, there was the New Growth Plan, there was the 10-point plan, there was ASGISA, there was the GEAR, there was the RDP. All of those plans, nobody questioned whether they were credible plans. We must ask the people with the responsibility to implement those plans what happened.
As you read information which you use from Stats SA, including the one that is generated here at the Reserve Bank, there are many things going on in the economy currently. When you look at that research and ideas that flow out of it, what is it that South Africa should be focusing on, at least at this time, if we're going to move from 0.5% to, I don't know, 1%, 1.2%, 2%, whatever the case may be?
You know, Tim, if one looks at all of those plans that I have mentioned, I can't think of us saying that any one of those plans failed. None of them failed. We just didn't implement them. And so, if you want to know what is it that we must be doing, the question is, we had identified things that must be done. Why are we not doing them?
That's the question.
Well, I have been assigned particular things to do. I have done them to the best of my ability, and I appeared before Parliament, and I came back from Parliament with a very clear view that I have been able to brief Parliament about the things I have been tasked to do and that I have executed them.
You know, jumping back to that point of the high unemployment rate, right, and affecting a substantial number of young South Africans, 54% of that age cohort that we would regard as the youth. Obviously, that's a major risk for the country to have 54% of people who tomorrow are going to replace you and I, and are already doing so now, or should be doing so now, not participating in any meaningful way, or not at all, in the economy. being excluded, basically. I think of it as a sort of apartheid against those youth who are marginalized.
You said a risk, and I manage risks. And risks are a problem. And problems must either be solved or be made to go away.
Enjoy delicious homemade iced tea this summer. Simply add fresh peach slices and juicy raspberries to ice-cold 5 Roses Ceylon tea. See on pack for more recipes, because nobody makes better iced tea than you and 5 Roses.
From rivalry over girls and clothes
So like Sakaluk exchange amagama to a point which is up in a CC.
to killings for cell phones and even milk. Just some of the reasons pupils are being stabbed to death at school.
And you could see that the boys were crying, and he was just looking at them like you are next.
Checkpoint Tuesdays, 9:30 p.m. on ENCA.
The ability to code by raising a generation of young people that creators of content, it is so critical. We want to raise young people that are entrepreneurial. My name is Lindiwe Matladi. I'm the founder and CEO of Africa Teen Geeks. Africa Teen Geeks is a non-profit organization that is working hard to inspire the next generation of tech innovators and entrepreneurs. You know, technology is such an integral part of our lives, and early exposure is important. If you want to create a generation of young people that could create the next Facebook and those kind of technology that can come from Africa, we need to inspire the generation earlier on to start thinking like that.
These are South African heroes.
I do see myself as a victim of R. Kelly.
He stole my life from me.
It wasn't just me.
Being abused like this.
I can't stress to you enough how people are still suffering behind things that went on 20 years ago.
The pain, the disbelief still, and the darkness of it.
Surviving R. Kelly, Mondays, 10 p.m. on E!
If we see unemployed young people as a problem, then that would mean that we must make them go away. And I want to change this narrative, because I don't think that we should be seeing as unemployed young people as a problem, as a risk, because then if we see them as a problem, as a risk, the solution we are going to come up with might not come with things that would improve societal welfare. I would like to see this pool of unemployed young people as a resource for our country. And the question we should be asking ourselves as a society is, why is it that we are endowed with this huge resource of young people who, if we tap into their creativity and ingenuity, that we would actually be able to lift the growth rate of this economy and lift the potential growth rate of this economy. Globally, the advanced economies are struggling with what is called aging population and demographic problems. And it is said that Africa could potentially benefit from what is called a demographic dividend. And that demographic dividend means you have got a pool of young people, you have got a young population that you have got to harness, tap into, harness, get them to be involved in meaningful economic activity. And I'm deliberately saying meaningful economic activity because I actually think if we think that we are just going to be creating jobs for these young people, we are looking at the wrong solution. We should be asking the question as a nation, do we want to be a nation of job creators or a nation of job seekers? Because if we want to be a nation of job creators, as we tap into this resource of young people, we will be thinking about unlocking their entrepreneurial potential so that they become a resource that creates meaningful economic activity. And when you create meaningful economic activity, jobs are created as a result of that meaningful economic activity. And that is how I would look at the issue of youth, that the youth of our country are a resource that must be harnessed. We must invest in our youth if we are to lift the economic potential of this country.
I know you've addressed this question differently earlier on, but I want to ask it slightly differently because there's always a contestation between transformation or restructuring of the economy versus growth, right? And the concern is about the big private sector companies that are oligarchs basically dominating different sectors. And as a result of that, the view expressed is that they're crowding out potential new players in the specific sectors. What's your view?
Well, you know, you said contestation between growth and restructuring and transformation.
Yeah,
you cannot get growth unless you are restructuring. And why we kept on talking about structural reforms is precisely because for you to get the growth, you need those structural reforms. The issue of big companies, that you will always have. Everything that is big today was small at some stage. So it's a big public policy issue which get addressed through other policies that are not in the realm of the central bank, like competition policy and so forth. The issue for me is not whether you have got big players or not. It's whether where you have big players in particular markets, that the markets remain competitive and that the consumers are able to get prices that are efficiently determined and that societal welfare is enhanced as a result of competition in those particular sectors. If we are going to take a view that says that if you are small and if you grow big, we are going to threaten you that you are becoming big, then we are not going to grow. The economies grow because companies grow.
One final question. You've been working in the public sector for a long time, and some of your colleagues you've mentioned have achieved great things, particularly in the treasury and financial management space. And there are many others who were hounded out. You asked me a rhetorical question about that earlier to say, what happened to them? So what is it that sustains those who try and be as ethical as possible in an environment that appears to be getting out of hand when it comes to corruption? I mean, if there's any word, any ideas, any support or ideas you may share with those who are doing their best in the public sector, what would that be?
You know, I actually think that an average South African is honest, has integrity, and has ethics. There might be a few who do not have. I think that what I would leave you with is how I have managed my own situation. And what matters is, are there institutions in place, control measures in place? Are they being monitored? And are the people who are occupying office making sure that they are adhered to? Most of the things that went wrong didn't go wrong because we didn't have the mechanisms in place. The mechanisms were there. It's a question of which individuals were put in place. In our case, as the central bank, we stick to our mandate, and that is what we do well. And it so happened that at some stage, banks had taken a particular posture with respect to accounts of companies associated with a particular family. The banks closed those accounts. And it was not long before I got a letter that said to me, you must intervene. And before I knew it, at some stage, some minister called for the removal of bank licensing from the central bank. Put simply, we felt under siege. And we had to take a posture that said, there are institutions in this democracy that we could use to defend the integrity of our institutions and stop the intrusion into what we have been tasked to do. If I was to stretch it, I would have said to you that we had a sense that the intrusion was actually undermining our constitutional responsibility. And we took a firm line and said that it is not going to happen. And that intrusion even ended up in a situation where our mandate, which is enshrined in the Constitution, was actually attacked. An attempt was made by an institution without the authority to do so, to ask that our mandate be changed. We used the institutions of our democracy to contest that, and we took it through, and our position was affirmed by the courts of our land. And so, if you are a public servant like I had been all my life, in any institution, live true to the mandate of that institution and use all the other checks and balances that are available so that you could protect the integrity of that institution. And that had stood me in very good stead.
And that is how I end our conversation. I appreciated our time. Thank you very much. And that's the Governor of the Reserve Bank, Lesetja Kganyago. A lot that we tried to cover here, and I'm very curious to hear from you. The hashtag, the Modise Network, is the one that you should use. And from us, have a great day.